Carp fishing in early spring can be tough. The carp are just waking up from their winter slumber and have not quite got on the feed just yet. Just as we had our first signs of spring this year, I was on the bank trying to catch myself a day ticket carp. Good morning, and today you join me at Little Hayes on the Todburn Manor complex. I'm fishing with Joe. He's just over my right shoulder in the swim behind me. We've got to the lake and it's actually pretty busy. There's only a couple of swims free, and we've managed to find ourselves two swims next to each other. Down in one of the bays, we've got a southwesterly wind, a warm southwesterly wind blowing into the bay just in front of me, in the bay that I'm fishing. The conditions are actually pretty good. The last few weeks it's actually been pretty cold, but the weather and temperature is on the rise, so we're hoping that the fish are going to be at least maybe switching on for the warmer with the warmer temperatures. I'll go through all my tactics with you later and what we're fishing and my sort of approach to day ticket carp fishing. Especially, I've only got the day. We've only got probably, I think we have to be off the lake at 4 o'clock because we've got other anglers leaving, arriving at that time. So we'll have to be off the lake by then. But without further ado, we'll get set up and see if we can catch ourselves a carp. When I'm fishing day ticket carp waters, I typically opt for an approach that I feel very confident in. For example, today I'm fishing Little Hayes Todburn Manor and I've gone for two of my rods on solid PVA bags. With the benefit of using solid PVA bags is you don't really need to know what the makeup of the bottom is. As long as you're not fishing in a heavy silt, then you know that your bait is going to be presented as it should be. Today I'm just using 2mm pellets with inside that solid PVA bag, and my rig is about 3 to 4 inches of soft braid, and I'm actually using a pop-up just with a split shot just to keep the bait on the bottom, and that's on a banana nut spice 14mm core baits flavoured pop-up in the white colour. And that's on my left hand rod and my middle rod. My right hand rod that I've got towards the island, the point of the island, I'm fishing a Ronnie rig. That's enough a great rig for your day ticket waters. As long as if there's debris on the bottom, you know your Ronnie rig's going to be fishing above that debris. So it's enough a great rig to have in your armoury when you're fishing those day ticket waters. Now, it's still the colder months, so my baiting approach is going to be very minimal. I'm not going to be putting out any loose feed around my baits. Obviously in the PVA bags, it's just going to be what's in those bags. And I might just put on a mesh PVA bag on my Ronnie rig, but for the first cast I certainly haven't done that. The fish, even though it is a warmer day today, the fish are still not going to be overly active. We have had a long cold spell, and today is the first day that the temperatures have been at least in the upper sort of single figure mark. So by no means is it a warm day, but hopefully the fish are going to it is going to wake the fish up, and you never know. You've got to be out on the bank to catch the fish, and hopefully we can get ourselves into a carp at some point today. Like myself, Joe had also opted for solid PVA bags and Ronnie rigs towards the island in front of him. With the conditions relatively mild, we thought this would be the best chance of a bite. Joe's main feature in his swim was an island about 3 rod lengths from the bank, and this is where he chose to place all 3 rods spread along the bank of the island. Well, the rods have been out now for the last 2 or 3 hours, and we haven't had so much as a bit of touch really, or a line bite. Haven't seen any activity around the lake. No one else seems to be catching, and the fish certainly aren't giving away their location of where they are in the lake. So what I've done, I've brought in all 3 rods, put on fresh baits, and I've cast them all back out. Now the left one I've put closer to the margin this time, in my left hand bay, and then the middle rod I've whacked out well and truly into that bay, just off the reed line, towards where there's a bit of an inlet coming in. I don't know whether that's a drainage pipe or my right hand rod. I'm continuing on the point of that island. Hopefully that will get us a bite for the rest of the afternoon. Like I say, we've probably got 3 or 4 hours left of fishing, but I'm pretty hopeful. The weather is certainly looking good for a bite, and the temperature is actually quite nice to be out compared to the last few times I've been out and it's been absolutely freezing. So it's nice to be out on the bank when the sun's shining. But without further ado, I'm going to have myself some lunch and see if we can get ourselves a carp. Well, about 2 minutes ago I just had a bite on my right hand rod, struck into it, felt a fish, and about 2 seconds later it's just pulled out. So it's showing signs that there are fish in the area and they're feeding. Joe, about 30 seconds later after I pulled out of that fish, had some indication on one of his rods, but unfortunately didn't progress into a full bite. But it's showing that there's fish in the area and they're certainly starting to move about, so hopefully we can get ourselves a fish before we have to get off the lake. During the colder months and moving into spring, it is essential to keep scanning the water for any signs of fish. If you do see a sign, it is always worth chucking a bait towards it, as even if you see one fish move, there is a good chance more are in that area. Well, it's been rather quiet on the fish front for the past couple of hours. Haven't seen any sign of activity, and still been keeping an eye on the other guys fishing the lake, and can't seem to see any sort of action happening around the lake. So it just seems to be one of those sort of quiet days. The wind, as you can probably tell, apologies for the audio quality, has picked up, and it is a very cold wind, so a complete contrast to what the conditions were like this morning. But we've got ourselves a couple of hours left. I've recast my right hand rod out towards the island, and that's sitting pretty. And my other 2 rods that I've got on the PVA bags, I'm going to leave them for the rest of the session because I'm happy with where they landed on the previous cast. So it's just going to be a waiting game. Hopefully we won't be having a blank today, but conditions now are not looking as good as they were earlier. But we'll certainly try our best, and hopefully we can get ourselves into a carp. Unfortunately, this trip resulted in a blank. However, I was back out again targeting a spring carp within the next few days. We joined me back on one of my club lakes for a few hours fishing, and the conditions couldn't be any different to what they were the other day. We've got a cold northeast wind blowing, and it's just really overcast, quite a gloomy day. And typically, looking at the weather forecast, I probably wouldn't have come out just with that northeast cold wind. It's not the ideal conditions for carp fishing at all, but you have to be out on the bank to catch the fish, so we're going to give it a go. We've got 3 or 4 hours. Let's get the rod set up and get them in fishing. Well, We've decided to come right to the far end of the lake today. The main reason being it's actually quite sheltered up here. On the far margin we've got a row of trees that's providing quite a lot of shelter onto the water, whereas down the end that you would have seen me fishing in previous videos, it's quite exposed and the wind is just howling down there. And being a cold northeasterly wind, I'm going to be imagining that the fish are going to want to get into some shelter as well. Much like I do today, I want to be as warm as I can, and the carp are going to be exactly the same, which is why I would imagine the majority of the fish are going to be up this end of the lake. But that's the theory, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. It didn't take long until my right hand rod, positioned towards the right hand side of the island, burst into life. Well, there we go, a perfect little common carp to start. Probably £1.5, if that. But a lovely little start nonetheless. Let's slip her back and see if we can get ourselves another one. Well, tactics for today couldn't really get much simpler. I'm using both rods on identical setups, using a leg clip with a 2.5 ounce pear lead, running down just to a simple blowback rig, and the bait of choice is good old trusty Spam. It's a bait that I haven't actually used a lot of in recent years, just when I've opted out for more of a boilie approach in my last few years of fishing. But Spam, I grew up using it, caught a load of carp on it, and for today's conditions it's absolutely spot on. But there's certainly some promising signs out there. A few carp have been crashing. It's definitely telltale signs that spring is on its way with that warmer temperature we have been having of late. Obviously today being a bit of an exception, I wasn't expecting to see much activity, but out in front of me we've had a few carp crash and some bubbles going through the swim, which is suggesting that the carp are on the bottom and looking for some grub. It might mean that sessions in the near future might be a bit more productive and we're in with a better chance of actually getting a fish on the bank, so it's promising signs. Well, I think that's going to be it for today's session. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. It's very much appreciated. And until the next time, I'll catch you later.